So this is likely to come across as a little bit of a dark video. But given everything that's going on in the world with coronavirus and the pandemic, lockdown, social distancing, people losing their jobs, people getting sick, all sorts of challenges to us as humans, I thought it's going to be very important to step back and reflect on the situation and to understand where we're at, more importantly, where we're going. What does this mean for our future? How can we best adapt to this situation? Now, one of the beautiful things about being human is that by far we are the most adaptable form of life that has ever existed. If you look at reptiles, very much unable to adapt. Mammals, far more strongly able to adapt as a group because they have strong social drives that allow them to support and protect each other. As humans, far, far, far better. Problem-solving abilities, imagination. We've even visited other planets, although we have not yet successfully colonized other places. That is a huge goal of protecting the human race. But us being adaptable as a species means us needing to understand what we're adapting to. Now, this is not the first global pandemic. It's the first one in our lifetimes, but probably the best known example is the Spanish influenza or the Spanish flu of 1918, which infected 500 million people. At the time, that was about 25% of the world's population. And it killed anywhere between 17 million and 100 million people. Historical statistics and the ability to attribute death to different factors was very, very difficult at the time. It was based on H1N1, which is basically we had a resurgence in our own lifetimes with the swine flu, which was quite scary. Now, in my lifetime, I've seen a couple of pandemics like Ebola, H1N1, and there were a few others as well, which created an enormous amount of fear. And yet, they dissipated quite quickly as well. And so from my perspective, from the perspective of most of us, this is going to blow over quickly. The thing that we need to learn from the fact that this is recurring is that there is always a chance that any one of these pandemics can become a real threat, while others may be able to be contained quickly. What we need to do as modern humans is recognize that we live in a world where populations are growing massively and where technologies that allow rapid transportation across the globe are far more advanced than they ever have been before. So the risk of something relatively manageable becoming a global pandemic is far higher than it has ever been. And if something hits us that's very, very powerful, it's going to knock us on our asses. We simply need to be aware of that risk, and we simply need to be prepared for it. Now, if you look at history, you look at the Spanish flu, one of the most interesting things about the Spanish flu is that it came in waves. The initial wave was quite devastating, but the second wave, when people thought it was gone and they began to relax, second wave was far, far more harmful. And I believe there was a third wave as well. So even when we think we've kicked COVID, we can't really completely let our guard down in terms of our practical thinking about safety, about cleanliness, about making certain that we are prepared for the possibility of a resurgence. We can't be blind to the way contagions work. We always have to be aware of the way they are transmitted and how to protect ourselves when there is a risk. So let's be mindful of that. And this is really what I wanted to talk about. Be clear that there is a risk and simply adapt to it. Simply be aware of what does this mean for you as a human. Now, I am very hopeful that, like the Spanish flu, someday this will be forgotten. The world will be free and open and safe, and everyone can get on with their lives and do whatever they want. Feel free to go outdoors and no social distancing, and things will be exactly as they were 1 year ago today. Now, it's the best case scenario. But we can never forget that there is a risk and we need to be prepared. So here is my take on that situation. The first thing that we need to do as modern humans is to be very, very good at the bubble. And by the bubble, I mean the understanding that the primary mechanism for spread of a contagion like this is person to person. Now, it can happen in different ways. You could have obviously airborne, you could have physical contact, there's STIs, there's all sorts of different types of abilities of different contagions to spread. But we need to be able to manage our bubble and understand how to control and minimize the risk of the contagion spreading by being able to go into our bubble the moment that it's needed. And essentially, I think of it as a series of concentric circles. There's you, there's your immediate family, family and closest friends, your household, your city or your school or your workplace, your country, humanity, the world, right? And these concentric bubbles are where you manage the risk at those boundaries. Now, what's likely to happen, in my view, is that our concept of freedom is going to shift a little bit. Right now, I grew up in America. I live in New Zealand now. I've always lived in countries that think of themselves as free, and freedom had always been thought of as complete lack of restraint on me being able to do what I want to do. I can go where I want. I can think what I want. I can write what I write. I can do what I want pretty much without limit, as long as it doesn't directly harm anyone else. And that's the key. In the case of a contagion, simply saying hi to someone else or touching them or going near them or talking to them could potentially put someone else at risk, could put you at risk, could put your family at risk. So our concept of freedom has to shift accordingly. Now, by that, I mean that governments, democracies, places where freedom is cherished, will begin adopting new concept of what it means to be free. And I think that what we're seeing now, this kind of alert level, reminds me a lot of when I grew up, and we had DEFCON levels. DEFCON, it was reverse. So DEFCON 5 was no risk, everything is fine. DEFCON 4 was things are a little agitated. DEFCON 3 was we're worried. DEFCON 1 was all out global thermonuclear war. And growing up in the US during the Cold War with Russia, there was always this known rating of how worried should you be right now. And it was a very interesting reality to grow up in and to live in. And I feel like I'm seeing that happen again, even though the scale is reversed, right? I haven't even looked up. I don't even know what alert level 5 or alert level 6. I don't even know what happens. I've been meaning to, because this is all brand new. It came so quickly. I think a lot of us are scrambling to figure out what's happening. What does this mean? The point of what I'm saying is, in the future, in coming years, what I think is likely to happen is that in a country like New Zealand that is free, what is likely to happen is there will be a New Zealand alert level at all times. And hopefully, most of the time, it will be at a 0 or a 1 or whatever the lowest level is. But everyone will always know about it. School kids will be taught about it. We will all kind of keep an eye on it, so that the moment something happens that creates a significant risk and pushes that alert level up, a new contagion appears, new infections appear somewhere in the world, there will be a point, let's say it's alert level 1, 2, or 2, or perhaps 3, I'm not sure, we will start locking down airports. The idea is those concentric circles, those boundaries, are the only place that we have control to mitigate and manage and prevent the spread of a contagion. So at the first level, that is going to be locking down international travel, or even if you allow it, having certain policies and procedures in place where, for example, people can fly into a country, but then they're automatically quarantined for 2 months or whatever period of time is necessary to ensure that they are safe in a special hotel designed for quarantine purposes, and control travel will be tightly managed. Monitoring will be a whole new industry, and that will all kick into effect anytime there is a risk. The next level of lockdown would be probably at the city level. The next level of lockdown would probably be what we're doing now, what we call formal lockdown, stay in your homes. I don't know what would happen beyond that. There's probably not a lot that can happen beyond that in terms of lockdown, but someone smarter than me has thought about this and knows maybe what that would look like. Maybe requiring everyone to wear masks and gloves or something like that would be the next level. The individual kind of tried to prevent the spread of the contagion. And that's the whole point, prevent the spread of the contagion. And this is a very interesting reality, because when it comes to our notion of freedom, it's a little bit uncomfortable to think that we may not be allowed to go outside at certain times, that someone else can decide when we can go to work, or someone else can decide when we can go take the kids to the park, or when we can go for a swim, or when we can go for a bike ride. Someone else can shut down that concert or that marathon that we had signed up for and paid for already. But this is our new reality. So it's the first thing I wanted to talk about is, if you get very good at your bubble, if you get very good at understanding how to safely and securely minimize the spread of the contagion, you are in the best position possible. That is the most adaptable way. And it can't just be you. It has to be everyone in your bubble. It has to be your closest friends and family. Your environment has to be designed around your ability to shift in and out of those concentric circles and lock down at any level. That means that you need to be able to go into your bubble at any moment. Think of it like having an emergency bag packed for an earthquake. This is exactly the same thing. But instead of having a bag that you grab and leave your home and go somewhere else, this is you going into your home at any moment, because we're now at level 5 all of a sudden. And you have what you need for the first few weeks. You got food, you got water, you've got your internet, you got contact with friends, you know who to message to let them know you're safe. You've got a mask, you've got gloves, you've got some disinfectant, you've got stuff. And it's a simple preparation, but it is the only way. Being able to walk into that quickly will give you so much more ability to deal with these stressful situations, in transitioning into them and transitioning out of them, than we've ever had in the past. This was particularly painful because it caught a lot of people by surprise, and most of us have never experienced anything like this in our lifetimes. But it is very important. And I think it is very important to be aware of this, because if we have a resurgence, we are suddenly going to have to lock down again, and it is going to happen overnight. So even when this begins to let up, in New Zealand, we know that China has plateaued and has hopefully dealt with all of its infected cases, at least as far as we know. New Zealand's infection rates seem to be heading towards a plateau. You can see the curve kind of starting to level off. Those are just the earliest media reports. We don't know. We don't know, right? But being prepared for this. Now, this also means that in terms of being able to maintain a decently balanced and healthy life while you're in the bubble becomes a primary concern. Now, all of us are dealing with that now. In New Zealand, it's about the end of week 1, and we are trying to figure out, how do I socialize? How do I date? How do I get my home exercise? How do I shop for food? How do I cook? Some people are used to only eating out, and they don't really know how to cook. So this is a very, very interesting challenge. And I would highly recommend that, as part of you developing your sense of adaptation to this kind of situation, that you make certain that you have everything you need inside your bubble. You have stuff for your kids to do. You have some basic medical supplies, so that for a cut or something, you got silly in the kitchen slicing an avocado, that you don't necessarily have to go to the hospital or go to emergency services, which puts strain on the system, and which, of course, probably exposes you a bit more than necessary. So there are a lot of things to consider here. Now, the way that I would approach this for myself is to simply step back and make a list of all of the things that I need to have a minimal, happy, healthy, moving forward life. For me, that includes 5 areas of life. That includes mindset, inner mindset, being aware of my emotions, doing my journaling, living by my values, constantly learning new things, right? I've got my health and fitness. This is very, very important. I need my exercise. So I have spent the last week refining an exercise routine to replace my gym now that it is locked up tight. And I'm feeling 100 times better now. God, I'm feeling so much better now that I actually am getting regular exercise. I feel like I'm still going to the gym and I can do that without even leaving my apartment. So that's pretty impressive, really. Relationships, incredibly important. We are mammals. You need other mammals. You need the people around you. Learning how to socialize and how to keep tabs on each other, how to resolve disagreements with your flatmates, how to have confrontations that are beneficial, how to help other people. So we're busy managing our own emotions in this stressful situation, but quite frankly, you will find yourself in situations where you have to help other people who cannot manage their own emotions. I'm in one of those situations myself right now with one of my flatmates. It's very interesting and educational in a way, but recognizing that this is the reality that you live in when there's a lot of stress and when people get locked down, being skilled, being aware, being prepared to deal with those situations is very, very, very helpful. Work. You need the ability to keep working. You need the ability to make some kind of money or income, even when you're in lockdown. Now, unless you are retired and have a bank account full of money and are completely independent of any future work, I would recommend that you don't depend on savings during those downtimes because we never know how long they're going to last. And because even if lockdown lasts 30 days and then things go back 100% to normal overnight, a lot of businesses won't survive that 30 days of being locked down, which means a lot of people are going to be without jobs. And there's a roll-on effect to this, right? The economy gets hammered as a result. Now service industries disrupt product industries, and there's this wave of impact that's going to ripple for years. The airline industry might go under right now. We don't know. And this is the point, is that the best thing you can do to adapt to the possibility of lockdown is to make certain that the work that you do and the industries that you choose to be involved in, there can be more than one, are something that you can do while you're in the bubble. Now, I happen to work from home most of the time anyway. I run a technology business and I do a lot of coaching. So both of those I can do from my apartment just as easily as if I go anywhere else. And that is quite beautiful and that is quite convenient. But for a lot of people, that is not a possibility. So you want to step back and say, for example, if you are in construction and that requires you to go out, or if you are working in a restaurant and that requires you to go out, and suddenly that gets shut down, what's your plan B? What else do you have that you've been developing over time that can bring in some sustainable amount of income that can at least assist in protecting you? Another important aspect to this may be to design your bubble accordingly to make certain that you are bubbled up with, say, family members, or that you are in a place where you're able to support each other. Even simple things like having a garden outside can do an enormous amount to help minimize the impact of suddenly having less income or even no income. So think about this a little bit from a survivalist mentality. If we're going to be going, open borders and then lockdown and then open borders and then lockdown, and we don't know when this is happening or how long it's happening or where it's happening, be prepared. Be prepared. So one of the things I'm going to do in the Brojo community is spend some time talking about the area of entrepreneurship. What can you create for yourself on the side or as a main business that can help defray some of that stress and that risk of going jobless? There are a lot of things you can do. It depends very much on who you are, what your values are, what your skills and strengths are. But I'm going to commit to this because I think that this is one of the areas that is most stressful to our guys. And I want to make certain that we are all as prepared as possible. I'd love to learn more about how this is affecting you. Many of you are in different parts of the world and are affected in very different ways than I am currently in Auckland, New Zealand. And I'd love to know how you're dealing with it as well. What have you found as upsides? What new things are you learning? How are you solving certain problems like income and socializing and health and fitness and keeping good nutrition, right? Because who knows? That's the whole point, right? And life has always been like that, but rarely are we confronted with it as directly as we are today.